Too many leaders fall in love with the sound of their own voice and wind up dictating plans and digging in their heels when problems begin to emerge. Even when they want to be a more collaborative leader, they can undermine their own efforts by defaulting to command and control language we've inherited from the industrial era. My next guest says it's time to toss that old playbook, and that begins with choosing the words that can dramatically improve decision-making and execution on your team. He is Captain David Marquet, author of Leadership is Language, The Hidden Power of What You Say and What You Don't. Welcome to the Business of Giving, David.
Hey, thank you, Denver, and thanks for all your listeners for joining us.
You know, there are so many leadership books out there, but not that many that focus on language that leaders use. Why do you think that's the case, David?
I don't know, but I'll hazard a couple of guesses. First is they don't actually know the words that you need to say to make things happen. It's great to say, oh, take care of your people. Oh, have a collaborative workspace. Oh, invite dissenting opinions. Okay, great. I'm in a meeting. This is what the other person just said. What do I say in response? And I think there's this almost condescending says, well, that's unnecessary. If I give people the idea, then they can choose their own words. I don't want to program them necessarily. Unfortunately, I think it's a reprogramming because we've been programmed with unhelpful language. And I've seen it over and over again where the leaders want to be a certain way, but the language is different. The language comes out different.
When did the power of language and its importance of being an effective leader first hit you?
When I was a submarine commander.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
Right, so language is very important. So there are two things. Just in the normal day-to-day business of being a submarine commander, we think very deeply about exactly what we're going to say and in what situation. So for example, let's say you're about to shoot a torpedo, and then you decide at the last minute that you don't want to shoot because you're not sure enough if that's actually the enemy target, that it could be a camouflage. And so what's the order that you give? Well, you might say, don't shoot. That, however, lends itself to peril because what if they don't hear the don't shoot? And this has happened. This has happened where commanders have given the order, don't shoot, but there's a bang or a clang or a noise or something happens during the don't, and all they hear is shoot, and when now we've shot, and then it's very hard to undo that. So we learned, so for example, we would say hold, or hands off. Hands off was one of the things we'd go to, which basically means don't do anything, but you got to say what you want, not what you don't want. So that's just one example, but the idea is we play with the words. And my programming as a submarine commander was about telling people what to do.
Yeah.
My specific story was I went to a ship at the very last minute that I wasn't trained for. And it was weird because I made a decision. I'm not going to tell these guys what to do. I'm going to get them to tell me what we need to do because they know the submarine. But over and over again, the words would come out. And in little ways, I'd be like, well, so don't you think we should go north? Oh, yeah.
Old habits are hard to break.
Yeah, right. Oh, I didn't really tell. I mean, you decided to go north, right? Not me. But so, and even that, right? You decided to go north, right? Even that little right at the end of a statement, it's just it's a little micro coercion. Yeah. The idea is yes, nod your head, go along, comply with what I want you to do. Don't think too hard about it. Don't challenge me. Don't question me. What I think leaders should say at that moment is, so even if let's say the team is making you make the decision, you say, okay, great, we're going to go north. How could this be wrong? What's incorrect about my thinking or our thinking? That kind of thing. You want to make the easy path. You want to invite the dissenting opinion as opposed to right, makes sense. We good? That's what I hear.
You all with me?
You all with me?
Yeah, no, it's that open-ended question, which allows them to really expound as to what they think as opposed to just following along.
Well, and the open-ended question is, so one way to think about it is just how many words is each person saying? And if all I ask is closed-ended questions, will it work? Should we launch the product? Is it safe? Will the assumption be true? Then the team responds with yes, no, yes, whatever. And I'm saying a lot more words than they're saying. But if I say, What's the probability it's going to be true? How do you see it working? How sure are you that we should launch the product? They just say more words, and that leveling of the words turns out to be very important.
I think you call it what, share a voice?
Yeah, and so we kind of discovered this accidentally. One of the things we analyzed in the book was a very unfortunate tragedy where a ship in 2015, this was not hundreds of years ago, left Florida, heading for Puerto Rico, ran smack into a hurricane and sank. And this was the El Faro.
Right.
It was Hurricane Joaquin in 2015. And people said, well, how did this happen? How could it possibly happen? Well, fortunately, the government found the black box. And so we have the whole recording. Now, airplane black boxes, just like an airplane. Airplane black boxes, though, they're typically 10 minutes, or the recordings are pretty short. But here we have 25 hours. It's a 500-page transcript. And we can hear the captain and the officer and the crewmen on deck. We can hear them talking. We hear when the captain's on the bridge with the team, when he's not on the team. And we can hear it. And in this language, we hear the words that trap them into following this failed course of action. And they're not bad people. The captain's not a bad guy. He's come up through the system. Yeah. And he's saying the exact same things that I was programmed to say as a commander. And so here's what, so the first thing we did, all I did was count the number of words. I didn't care what kind of a word it was. And it turns out that every time there was 3 people on the bridge, the captain, an officer, and a crew member, the word count quantitatively matched the salary count. They went in order. And it was almost numerically relative to the salary. So the captain made the most, then the officer made a little bit less, and then the crewman made a whole lot less. So the numbers were like 55%, 40%, 5%.
Yeah, the junior people who don't get a peep.
You don't get it. And then when the captain would leave, the other 2 people would speak, and it would be almost 50-50. But again, the more senior person, it's almost as if it had this meter. That, okay, well, you're the senior person. You get the number of words relative to your proportion of the salary of the people in the room. And it just happened naturally. But we know that when you have a more even share of voice, and that happens either because the leader says less or because we get more participation by the team, it's a more resilient, more adaptive team. You're going to make better decisions, and you'll have less fragility. It's less likely that you're going to do something like launch 737 MAX software, which was a bad idea.
Let me take this off the ship for a moment and bring it into the workplace, okay? Now, I've been going to meetings my entire life, and I'll tell you what frequently happens, as you well know. You have a major topic on the agenda you want to discuss. The leader gets up there, frames the issue for us, and we discuss it. And then maybe at the end, we'll take a vote on what course of action we should follow. Tell me what is wrong with that approach.
That is the industrial age approach. It's called discuss and vote. And everyone does it. We don't even make a decision about it. Of course, that's how we're going to attack this problem. Well, it turns out that if you wanted to create a process for running a business or running a meeting that resulted in compliance, that resulted in not hearing dissenting opinions, that resulted in everyone just going along with doing what you wanted them to do, that the thing you described is exactly what you would do. Why? First, you anchor the group to what you think, and then the group starts talking, and more likely than not, some right-hand person of the boss is going to say, oh yeah, boss, we've done all the testing, it's going to work, which is really important, you got to catch up to the competitors, blah, blah. And so the group starts falling in line, and then the person who's sitting over here who's down in engineering, who actually knows that there's some problem, just slumps down in their seat, and there's less and less likely for them to speak up. So it's an unthinking way. The fact that we run the meeting that way is something we don't even think about. We don't teach it in business school, how to run a meeting. And so we just repeat what we've done, which has been repeated from what was done, which comes from the industrial age, and it's about compliance. And so what you really want to do is vote first, then discuss it. And the vote should be if possible, depending upon the safety in the group and how big the group is, you want to make people be able to vote on a probabilistic thing. So I would say something like, let's say it's a decision to launch a product.
Mhm.
How sure are we that the product is ready for launch? 1 to 5, something like that. And then what you do is you look for the outliers. And if most of the group is standing up at 4 and 5, then you look for the people, very important for the people down at 1 and 2, and you listen to them first. You invite them to speak first. That's how you get away from this psychological trap.
And that's where all the innovation comes, right? With the 0s and the 5s, or the 1s and the 5s, not with the 3s and the 4s.
Yeah. All innovation, we call it embrace the outlier. All innovations start as an outlying opinion. If it weren't an outlying opinion, it wouldn't be an innovation. It'd be something I was already thinking. It's that person who comes to you with that idea, and your immediate thought is, they're like, hey, why don't we do this? And your immediate thought is, no, that's crazy.
That'd never work.
That would never work. Oh, we tried that 5 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And so my advice to business leaders at that moment is you can think that, but then don't say anything. And then be curious first and ask some questions. I call it, you create like a blank space, like you don't know. Assume this is the next greatest thing. Now, you don't have to do it. I'm not saying you have to do it, but you make that decision after you've been curious and you learn.
Got you. David, you draw a distinction between red work and blue work. What is the difference, and how should a leader's language change according to the kind of work that's being done?
So this is a useful model that we found, which is we have 2 different kinds of work, and we use our brains in 2 different ways when we're engaging those 2 different kinds of work. The first kind of work is what people mostly associate with as the work, which is what we call red work. And generally it benefits from focus. I'm coding, I'm driving, I'm flying an airplane, I'm doing surgery on a patient, I'm giving a presentation. It's the actual work. I'm on an assembly line. The classic picture of red work is a person on the assembly line. It's physical, it's visible, it's active. It benefits from conformity and compliance. We want everything the same. I want the holes drilled exactly the same. Red work, however, is improved by something called, which we call blue work. Now, blue work, we use our brain in a totally different way. In blue work, we don't want that focused, exclusive mentality. What we want is very broad, open, inviting mind, where we like variability. We like different opinions. Whereas variability when it comes to manufacturing the car is bad, variability when it comes to thinking about how to improve the manufacturing process is good. So it's 2 different brain processes. The problem is, if you don't understand, is this red work or blue work, you don't know whether this is a process where I should be focused and excluding variability, or I should be broad and embracing variability. And so the problem with that meeting is that meeting is being run in a way to reduce variability. The meeting so variability, i.e. how different do people think? So since a decision is what we would call blue work, it benefits from variability, it benefits from dissenting opinions. We need to run it in a way which embraces variability. And so that it's not like if I wander through the day, I'm sort of embracing variability, I'm sort of focused. This is the way most people live their life. You want to be hyper focused when it's time to be focused, and hyper broadly aware when it's time to be broadly aware.
Let's talk about work today, because what you describe between blue work and red work, I think of the industrial age again. I think between exempt, blue, and non-exempt, exempt and non-exempt, leader and follower, college educated in a high school, white collar, that would be blue. Blue collar, that would be red, ironically.
Right.
What color is work today? Is it more purple?
Yeah. I think that's exactly the problem. The way industrial age firms handled the problem of red work and blue work is they said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to separate the workforce into 2. Some people, and like you said, the unionized folks, the high school educated folks, they're going to do the red work, the actual work. And then the college age kids college educated kids are going to do the blue work. They're going to do the thinking. So what we've done is so it's easy. The we don't have to flip mindsets. I'm either an expansive thinker or I'm a focused worker. But the problem is the thinkers are making decisions about work, which means they're getting a different group of people to do something that they haven't decided to do. So all that the structure is inherently coercive. It doesn't matter what kind of lipstick you're going to put on that. You can call it motivation, inspiration, or whatever, but it's basically, I got to get someone else to do something I decided they needed to do. That's coercion. So today, we know the best performing teams let the people doing the work make decisions about the work as much as possible. So it's if you stood way back, it's purple by timeline.
Yeah.
But it's purple. It's not a smear. It's blue, red, red, blue, blue, red, blue. But it happens so quickly.
The variability.
That if I stand way, way, way back, and so your job as a leader today is different. Your job as a leader today is not to make decisions to tell people what to do. It's to structure that red work, blue work rhythm so that the team steps out of the production work. If they step out every other minute, you're not going to get anything done. So that's too much. If they don't step out for 10 years, you're out of business because you didn't change fast enough. So somewhere between 1 minute and 10 years. But that's your job, right? I'll bound it for you. Like, you can probably do better than that. But as things become, so for example, for our clients, one of the things that we're having them do is pre-COVID, another way to think about it is you have an expiration date. Every time you make a decision, there's an expiration date. So let's say your standard decision, how we're going to do something, features for a product, whatever, the expiration date used to be 3 months. Now COVID comes along. Things are changing much more rapidly. For our clients, what we're having them do is shrink up their expiration dates. Okay, now the expiration date might be just a month. So I'm not telling them what to do, but we're creating a structure so that the team has to make these more frequent pauses and allows the people in the work to say, you know what, this isn't the way it is anymore. We got to change.
Yeah, very smart. And you don't even have to wait for that pre-pause. I mean, if you're doing that red work and you see something going awry, you do a timeout and say, time to go blue here. We have to stop and see whether what we're doing is what we should be doing.
Exactly, and this is the function of the andon cord in the Toyota production system that most people have heard about, which is if a worker on the assembly line had a problem, he had a cord which made a light go on, would say, "Hey, I have a problem here," and the purpose of that was to shift from doing production focus work to problem solving. So we got to and step one, you can't problem solve when your brain is under stress. Mm-hmm. And time pressure is a huge stressor. So the first thing leaders need to do is stop the line. We're going to pause. I'm going to think. We have time to do it right. And you're going to feel, as the leader, you're going to feel under stress because you're going to be, I'm losing production time. But you're going to make a better decision, and the team's going to learn, and then you can go back to production. Production will be faster, robust, and all that good stuff.
Give me a little flavor of the language, David. The language you would use when you're in blue work as a leader, and the language you would use when it's red work.
So in blue work, so typically you're thinking, hey, it's a meeting, it's some collaboration. So there's a couple of opportunities. One, we're making a decision, launch the product or not. And so the idea is ask questions that are probabilistic. Here's a simple rule. Just start all your questions with the word how. How sure are you? How likely is it? Or what? Okay, what would that look like? As opposed to a binary. Are you sure? Does it work? This is what we typically hear, because a binary question is a reduction of variability to 2 possible answers. Also, you do what we talked about before. You vote first, then we embrace the outliers, and we're asking, how do people see it differently? How could this be wrong? We're projecting into the future. We're saying, imagine it's 6 months from now and this all went sideways. What's the most likely reason? And the engineer stands up and says, well, I can tell you. Okay, great, I just learned something. So it's this very embracive, curious, open-ended. It feels slow. It's aggravatingly frustrating for someone who's used to, like, no, just do this, we move on.
Yeah.
Now in red work, though, it's about compliance and conformity. wearing your safety gear, it's not like we're going to have a conversation about this. You work on a construction site, you're going to wear your hard hat, your steel-toed shoes, and your safety vest. This is not something you can decide. You can decide whether to take the job, knowing that if you say yes, you're going to wear a hard hat, safety vest, and steel-toed shoes. But you don't get to decide that every day when you come to work. That's compliance at that point, and it's appropriate. And again, I see the mistake over here. There was a tragic accident in construction, New York City. A worker near an elevator shaft was supposed to be connected by a harness, wasn't. A supervisor came by at some point during the day. The conversation is not recorded, but what we do know, the supervisor did not order him to put a harness on, because later he didn't have a harness on. Yeah. And he fell and he died. So it's okay. It's okay to tell people what to do in the domain of red work, but it's also okay, and you want to avoid telling people what to do. But you have to understand, are we in red work or are we in blue work to enter that decision tree?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking here as you're talking about those questions beginning with how and what, because I imagine the responses, not only are you getting the share of voice, but you're getting nuanced responses. They're the kind of things that allow you to deal with the complexity of a problem, which can bite you on the other end, and that opens up. On the other hand, why would not be a good first word, correct?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of why, because why can come across as provocative. It can come across as testing. So for example, Denver, you said to me, hey, I think we should delay product launch by 2 weeks so we can do more testing. And I'm like, why would you want to do that? You immediately realize that this is not good news. I'm not happy with it.
You also get me very defensive.
Yeah,
exactly. I get defensive immediately, you know?
Right. Right, and you'd probably say, well, I'll tell you the 5 reasons. Some people might say, yeah, never mind. Or knowing that that's a pattern, they don't even bring it up to begin with. I'll give you a very simple example of how this how thing plays out, even amongst trained professionals. Flying on a cross-country flight, middle of the night, lady stands up, faints, basically falls over in the aisle. Flight attendants turn on the lights and come rushing over, big to-do. Are you okay? Are you okay? That's the question they're asking. What's the lady respond? Yes, of course I'm okay. I mean, she's basically embarrassed.
Yeah.
No one says, I'm not okay. I had a guy, I was riding a bike in a group with a guy who crashed. He's lying on the ground. Other guy says, are you okay? He says, yes. It turned out later, he had a broken hip. He couldn't.
Yeah. I'm a tough guy. I'm fine. I'm okay. Don't worry about me. Yeah.
The problem is we're asking the wrong question. We should say, how are you? Start with how, or where does it hurt? Or what are you feeling? Or how are you feeling? Or where's the pain? Something like that. People can respond to people. They will respond to that. They plopped this lady in the seat next to me because it was empty. And so I asked her like a how question, like, how are you doing? Oh, I just feel a little lightheaded. I feel a little embarrassed. So she was talking to me. She wouldn't say anything. So the flight attendants can go back and write in their journal. Well, we asked the lady if she was okay. She said yes. So I'm covered. The lawyers are happy, I guess. But that doesn't work. That doesn't work in business. And it's basically just. What we're trying to do there is really an abdication of responsibility.
There is, yeah. These are leading questions to get a response that will get you off the hook so you can move on.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We talked about this industrial age language. Do you think this pandemic, David, this lockdown, working remotely, is going to do anything to accelerate the demise of the industrial age playbook in those areas where it still exists?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends how firms look at this. I on the one hand, the uncertainty that's involved is tends to push people back into sort of, I need to know what's going on. I'm going to keep you in a Zoom meeting all day long so I can check on you, whatever it happens to be. And that uncertainty is playing havoc with our ability as leaders to trust, to give up control, to allow the team to make decisions. On the other hand, a number of our clients have done things where we used to talk to a big bank the other day. We had a 5-year plan to get 20% of our people working remotely. And we were debating, which we hadn't implemented yet. We were just debating whether it was okay to implement it. And then COVID came, and now 100% of people are working remotely, and it took 3 weeks. So the question I asked them is, okay, well, what are the behaviors? What did you learn? So your bank's still standing, I see, great. But what are the behaviors, and can we turn it into something strong? We know from your muscles atrophy if they're never put under stress. We intentionally go to the gym to put our bodies under stress to make us stronger. And there are other things, fasting, immersion in cold water, blah, blah, blah. We can put ourselves under stress, and we will live longer, healthier lives with these periodic stressors. So rather than thinking about this as you're triggering my PSTD, post-traumatic stress disorder, think about it as post-traumatic stress growth, which organisms can, in nature lives on the principle of PSTG. So your company can live on that same principle. So capture the things that are happening, and be stronger coming out from this. And it's, hey, we didn't choose it, and there's a tragic aspect to what's going on, obviously.
But for the company,
we're going to pay that anyway, so we might as well do the best we can with coming out stronger.
Yeah, well, as they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and companies are under that stress, so you can come out the other end in better shape if you get the right lessons and do the right things.
Yeah, today, Wall Street Journal, I read there are only 4 of the top 30 airlines showed a profit in the last quarter, big surprise. What do they have in common? They had the agility to convert their airplanes from passenger to cargo. And so this idea is, I'm not a passenger airline or a cargo airline, but I'm agile, I'm flexible, I'm resilient. I can do this, I can do that, I can change. That's the thing that's going to keep you stronger. So
yeah, well, they think outside the frame. Almost everybody thinks inside the frame, and that is putting people on those airplanes. You got to think outside as to survive. Well, with this industrial age playbook, which will eventually fall by the wayside, you talk about a new playbook, and that includes 6 plays. Just say a word about those, if you would.
I think of it like programming, just like playing football. A situation comes up, we're going to respond in a certain way. We as humans, we as leaders, we as bosses. For example, if someone challenges me, or asks me a question, I'm going to defend. I will explain it. Curious about where they're coming from and thinking they're right is probably not my automatic playbook. And I see this all the time. Getting on the airplane, someone's putting a bag in the overhead. It's a little bit big, it's not going to fit. And I said something like, hey, I'm not sure that bag's going to fit up there, because he's going to break the bin and we're not going to be able to get it. And he's immediate defense. No, it'll fit. Defend. We react, respond, reply. That's it. React, respond, reply.
Yeah.
So it's not curious. It's not, hey, well, what are you seeing that I'm not noticing about this? Well, you tried 8 times and it didn't work. In any event, it's not about this guy and me, but it's about, we're programmed to react in certain ways. And as leaders, that's how we react. And our programming is designed from the industrial age, from that original coercion. My whole thing is to get other people, to get the red workers to do what I've chosen for them to do in the way that I've chosen for them to do it. So all my language, and so the plays are things like, obey. First of all, the first industrial play is obey the clock. That's why we have words, clockwork. Yeah, that's why we clock in. It's because the clock controls everything. The problem.
I think of Lucy and Ethel on the assembly line with those chocolates. You know?
Exactly, right. Yeah, I'm the only other guy in the whole audience who's going to know
what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about obey the clock, and what leaders today want to do is control the clock. And then the next thing is we coerce people into complying with what we want them to do, and we continue the work as long as possible. When Ford started his assembly line with a Model T, he went for almost 25 years before doing a major overhaul. Meantime, the Roaring 20s, GM came along and they never caught up.
Yeah, that's right.
And we want to prove that we're doing the right thing. We want to conform in a hierarchical position. So now we want to get rid of all that. And what you want to do instead is obey the clock, collaborate truly, which results in a commitment because we've been part of the decision. Then we're going to complete. So we're going to do the work in chunks, like this idea I talked before, the expiration date, 1 month, 3 months, a year, and then we're going to pause and reflect. Then we're going to improve. The problem is in the industrial age play, I didn't care about your emotional well-being because I didn't ask you to do anything to tax it. I said, I'm going to stand behind you in a clipboard and I'm going to evaluate how you're doing. Now what we know the best performing teams, people stand up themselves and say, you know what, we could have done that better. But in order for that to happen, they need to feel that they're in a safe enough environment. And so this idea that I got to care about your emotional condition is all new. It matters because I'm going to ask you, hey, how can we do things better? If I didn't have that as part of work, then I wouldn't care. I mean, I would care maybe as a human, but I wouldn't really care.
Right.
So the idea is, even though you may want to be an enlightened leader, the language you're using, unless you've deliberately changed it, is anchoring you in an unenlightened way.
I love your comment about improve. I'm trying to think the last company that said this is how we're going to improve over the next 90 days. They should have that on CNBC sometimes. This is how we've improved. It's all the numbers and the sense and the shareholder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's a prove. And so the quarterly goals, I said, show me your quarterly goals. We're going to sell this much, make this much, do this much. Well, what are you going to learn? Do you have quarterly learning goals? And you can look at this in the annual reports and you'll see, and the ones I like to compare, back in 1999, I compared, no, that's not true. Today, recently, I've compared the Amazon and the GE annual reports from 1998, 1999. You look back in that era, the end of Jack Welch, Bezos coming in to run Amazon. Jack Welch was all about doing. Well, this is what we did. We sold as much. There's a little bit of lip service about learning, but it's kind of vague. Bezos says plain out in his very first annual report, we've started, we're on our way, we have much to learn. And so when companies make quarterly goals, I said, there's got to be two dimensions. What are we going to do? What are we going to learn?
Yeah, excellent. Finally, David, as a leader becomes more, if I can say so, of a coach, then we have traditionally viewed the role of a leader. What new skills do they need to develop to be effective in this new capacity? What new skills did you have to develop, and how did you develop them?
So I kind of like the idea of the word coach. It can go sideways though if people think I can never tell a person what to do. I mean, the coach sometimes has to say, you know what? So I'm a swimmer, a triathlon guy, and I don't need a coach to say, well, what do you think you need to do? I need him to say, like, hold your hand this way. Just like, tell me. I can't see myself. So it's okay to have self-discovery, but it's also okay to just tell people what to do. It's the ability to flex. I just say DSD, do something different. And so one day I'm asking questions, I'm letting the team figure it out, and another day I'm just saying, no, this is the better way, do it like this. And the ability to flex back and forth across that spectrum is key. It's just like the ability of the airline. Okay, we were shipping passengers, now we're going to ship stuff. It's flexibility and agility, because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but we're going to keep having these shocks like COVID. The conditions for these shocks are simply getting more and more prevalent. The world is becoming more connected.
Yeah.
200 years ago, a pandemic in China would have been It would be slow moving. We'd be 10 years before we even heard about it.
About right, yes.
Yeah, right. Or the thing of the Black Death, but it was very slow moving. Now it's like, boom, 12
Mhm.
hours later, we got guys in Seattle sick. So these kind of shocks are simply going to increase in severity and frequency. I'm pretty sure about that. What they are, I have no idea. And so the ability to respond and react to these things, that's the skill you want.
Mhm. The book is titled Leadership is Language, the Hidden Power of What You Say and What You Don't. You know, there are a lot of things you can do to become a better leader, but it's hard to imagine any which would have a greater impact than changing the language you use. And this book really shows you how. Thanks, Dave. It was a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Cheers.